Don't want me to use your toilet? No problems. I'll start by saying this story isn't mine, but a friend's. He's a builder, and while most of his work consists of building new houses from the ground up, he also does work on existing houses that are occupied. It's also worth noting that we live in a semi-rural area in Australia. The population here is quite spread out, and it's not uncommon for him to travel 60 to 100 kilometers to a job site. One such time, he was working on a kitchen renovation of a house in a neighboring town 60 kilometers, about 35 miles, away. It was a decent-sized job, and he was there for over a week. Obviously, being there for 8 hours at a time, he eventually had to use a toilet, and on the first day, he simply helped himself to a toilet in the house. Upon arriving on his second day, he was greeted by the owner of the house, and then told that he was not allowed to use the toilet in their house, and that the owner thought it was very rude of him to use it without asking. "Well, what do you want me to do?" he asked. "I don't care, but I don't want you filthying my clean toilet," was the response. "Not a problem," he answered. Later in the day, the inevitable happens, and nature called. So he jumped in his ute and drove home. A 120-kilometer round trip, which took well over an hour. The owner was out for this time and didn't notice, which disappointed him. But eventually, she returned and saw the progress for the day. She was happy enough with the work so far, but he couldn't help himself and said, "I would be a lot further along if I didn't have to duck out for over an hour." "Why did you have to do that?" she asked. "Well, I had to use the toilet, so I went home." He said that she just stared at him for the longest time, and he could see the cogs turning in her head as to why he would have to do such a thing. She never said anything about it, but later in the day she wanted to discuss payment. He reminded her that he worked on an hourly rate, and that yes, it included travel time. That's when she hit the roof. A quick reminder that he would happily use her toilet if he was allowed to, but she made it clear that he wasn't, and she had to eat her words. He felt a bit bad about it, so on day 3, he drove into town and used a public toilet instead of driving all the way home. But this still took a good 10 to 15 minutes. On the morning of day 4, a truck arrived with a hired portaloo for him to use. This woman was really keen to keep him out of her toilet and ended up paying God knows how much extra for it. This woman spent at least a couple $100 extra between the hired portaloo and the travel time, when she could have just spent a couple extra dollars and maybe 2 minutes to wipe a toilet down with Lysol. To each their own, I guess. 1 minute late is late? Okay. So I had some attendance issues at an old job. Not really. The policy was that within 5 minutes of the shift is still considered on time. Well, I had a manager who wanted to abruptly change corporate policy and define clearly that late equals late. So, background. It's retail, and I'm in my senior year of college. I'm not making a career out of this job, and I'm 5 years older than all of my coworkers. My immediate manager felt threatened by me, as I had previously declined leadership positions to finish school. He always had something he needed to fix about me, even though I had 7 straight months of rockstar performance. Sounds like Best Buy. Exceeding metrics by 10% above goal, and I frequently aided in training new employees. Once again, this was a college filler, not a career move for me. I'm not a bad employee. However, I was a busy employee. My last semester working there, I had 5 classes and would usually be within a minute or 2 of my shift. So manager one day specifies I'm late. It's 3:01 and my shift starts at 3 o'clock. To which I said, marginally. He, in front of other coworkers, decides he's going to put his foot down. No, OP, 1 minute late is late. So I stopped my task and calmly asked him, "Then what does it mean when I'm staying 45 minutes after my shift to help when we're short-staffed?" And he said, "We don't even want to have this conversation right now," and left. To be fair, he's not wrong. He handled the situation wrong. If he wanted to change something, we could have talked in private. He wanted to swing dicks in front of the new hires. So I complied. I made it a point to clock in and out exactly when my shift starts and ends. It's glorious. A couple weeks later, he tells me to do something 2 minutes before my shift ends. So I start the task, and 2 minutes later, I said, "Sorry, manager, my shift is over." Clocked out and left. My mindset is, go ahead, try to fire the best looking employee on paper for working exactly his shift and not a second longer. He didn't want to swing dicks after that. I can't help but think of that last sentence too literally, and it's weirding me out. But anyway, fairly certain that's Best Buy. When I worked at Best Buy, they did the whole Rockstar thing, 5 minutes early thing. Pretty certain I'm right on this. Or at least another retail store. Boss has no time for my time off. The company that I worked for had its work year for leave allocation between January 1st and December 31st. The industry I work in, UK construction, shuts down over the Christmas break. So you have mandatory leave taken out of your allowance. That's not a problem. I have 25 days leave to take, and the year in question was mad. I never had a chance to take any leave, and was managing to recharge on the national holidays through the year, with the odd day off here and there to pad it out. We get to August, and I have put in a week in for September, which has been approved, but then I'm allocated to a job starting at the beginning of September. They need me to work that holiday. I am reluctant, and I warn the GM that if I don't get a chance to take some leave, that I will be finishing the year at the start of December. GM says that's fine. So I start the project, which is programmed to go into the following year. The project is going well, but every 2 weeks I feel the management out for cover so I can take some time off. No dice. Everyone is hammered. So, at the start of November, I put my holiday request in to use up my leave, and it gets approved. Bingo! After that, each week I email the project manager and GM that I will be finishing on the 4th of December, and they need to line someone up for a handover and cover the month. Ignored. Don't care. We will look at it later. 3rd of December rolls up. I call the GM to wish him a good holiday, and I will see him in the new year. GM starts panicking. There's no one lined up for cover, and no one available to drop in. There has been no handover, so no one is up to speed on the project's nuisances. Long story short, he agreed to pay overtime. So, I am now for a full month being paid for my normal pay as paid leave, and flat overtime for the hours worked. That's double time for day shift for a month. It gets better because on the day before the project shuts down for the Christmas break, the GM calls me. He needs someone to do an overnight shift with confined space qualifications. At the time, in the department, that was only me. To supervise a contractor carrying out a survey for 6 hours. Convo as follows. Me, what's the overtime? GM, what do you want? Me, double time and a half. GM, that's fine. Me, bugger, you agreed too quick. So, the day after I worked the last day that year on the initial project at double time, I left home at 6 o'clock. I get home at 1800 for a quick meal and a shower. Half hour, and I'm back out the door. 1830, arriving at this other location. At 1930, worth noting that travel time hours are on the clock. This isn't normal commuting. Contractor sets up to do this survey. They finish at 5 o'clock the following day. I got home at 6:30 and collapsed onto my bed. To summarize that day alone, I got paid 8 hours paid leave, plus 12 hours overtime, plus 12 hours at 2.5 times. 30 hours. In 24.5 hours, I took pay for almost 50 hours. It was a good month. At the time, I took about $2,000 a month home. For that month, I think I took home $7.5 grand. They actually had a problem with paying the overtime, so that it did not show up as a massive breach in hours worked regulation. Did I miss the malicious part of that? Or even what he was supposed to comply to? That was a good story, but I'm very confused. I don't feel like that was malicious compliance. Getting all my PTO paid out. Despite working in a high-stress, high-tech sales role, I believe that when you're on vacation, paid time off, you don't work and disconnect. Whenever I was on PTO and my manager would request something from me, I would email, "Are you asking me to work on my time off?" The answer was always something like, "Yes, I really need this done." After I worked, I would reclaim the vacation time in our employee portal. I saved every email. Last week, HR launched a new portal that allows us to see vacation time, sick time, etc. My vacation time balance was about 2 weeks short. When I alerted HR to it, they said they took back a chunk of time I had reclaimed because they felt I was abusing the system. Then, I sent them every email from my manager asking me to work, documenting that it truly wasn't time off. I also included a link to the state law stating that even a minute worked in the day counted as a full day. I'm salaried. My PTO balance was quickly returned. The power of staying well organized and documenting everything. That's a skill that I still have yet to learn. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing if you're new. And if you really liked it, maybe give it a thumbs up and a share. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.